Hello everyone. Let's talk about work. Let's talk about why everyone should be working less. Not only is the plea to working less morally justifiable, but working less, if done the right way, will not involve sacrificing the creation of wealth. We would all work less if we knew we could make the same amount of money. And while that is true on an individual scale, it is also true on a global scale. If your business or your entire country can create the same amount of wealth or GDP growth with less people working, that would be a good thing, wouldn't it? That would mean we are more efficient at our jobs. That would mean everyone gets to have equal or better quality of life while having to work less for that quality of life. And to start off, I will go through a simple demonstration of how it definitely is possible for people to work less and more wealth to be created. It's happening in the United States right now. And when people hear that, they should be happy. Except they're not. When people hear how low the employment rate is, everyone assumes this is a bad thing. And they're right. It is bad. But it shouldn't be. Why is it bad for people to work less while, as a whole, the country makes more and more money every year? Because it is tied to our ability to live. If you don't work, your quality of life is going to be absolutely terrible. This puts people in awkward positions of defending useless jobs. Plenty of people out there think their job is of no value to society, but why would they say anything to their boss about it? Why would anyone who only needs 4 hours to complete their job every day instead of 8 tell their boss to cut their hours in half? Even if we could cut out all the useless jobs, this would only widen the wealth gap. This would make wealth inequality even worse than it already is. Corporations would continue to create the same amount of growth, and they'd be able to do it while having to write less paychecks. So normal people who know that what they're doing is pointless have a vested interest to not say anything and keep doing their pointless jobs. Alright, let's see some graphs that show the employment rate has been progressively getting lower and lower for the past at least 3 decades, while the GDP growth of America, sorry everybody else, the GDP growth of America has continued to rise. Here are the graphs of the last 15 years of the employment rate on the left as a percentage and the rate of GDP growth as a percentage on the right in the same 15-year time span. And in case you're wondering why I don't use the unemployment rate instead, that is because the unemployment rate only measures people that actually want a job and don't have one, as opposed to the total amount of people without jobs. What do we see? Well, the first thing we see is that 2008 crash. Employment rate drops from 63 to almost 58%, and GDP growth looked like it was on its way down, starting a little before 2008, so we'll say from 2% down to negative 8% at its lowest point. But what do we see afterwards? What has happened in the last 10 years since the recession? This is where the differences come in. This is where we can see wealth can easily be created with less people working. We can see it in action. Look at how fast the GDP growth goes back up to 2% and above and beyond. Before 2010 hits, it is over 2%. And probably around 2009, it gets back to zero, which means it's not going down anymore. And since then, from 2010 to 2018, it's been relatively the same. Goes up and down a lot, but remember, this is the growth rate. But yes, the growth rate is more or less hovering between 2 and 4% for the past 10 years. And then we look at the employment rate the past 10 years after the recession, and it is not even halfway to what it was in 2007. Not even halfway back. In fact, it took until 2014 just to climb a little bit. So there are almost 3% less Americans working today than there were in 2007, but the GDP growth is the same. 2007 was the height of a boom before a recession, and it looks like right now, 2018, was the height of our 8-year boom before either a recession, maybe not as big as the one in 2008, but I am just trying to prove the simple point that less people working does not mean the country is losing money. It does not mean less wealth is being created. Now, let's get back to the big picture. Why is not working, if it doesn't have any effect on wealth creation, on anyone else's livelihood, why would a pointless job being removed be a bad thing? Because the person who holds that job needs that job to survive. So when people come at me with the common response of, hey, did you take Economics 101? Don't you know people have unlimited wants and the resources to satisfy these wants are limited, and we live in a world of scarcity because of that. So there's always going to be jobs. Even if AI takes over truck driving, there's going to be people who do this, this, and this, and one excuse after another. And hey, that is true a lot of the time. I'm not looking to argue against people having unlimited wants and desires. For all I care, that can be true. But that does not equate to an unlimited amount of jobs. There are not an equal amount of new jobs replacing old, obsolete ones. This is not a 1-to-1 ratio. Upgrades in efficiency and new technology vary in the amount of jobs that they deem obsolete and jobs that they create. So of course there isn't going to be a 1-to-1 ratio between jobs that we lose and between jobs that we gain, no matter what people's desires are. This is not a zero-sum game. The increase in human desires for things like 2-day shipping does not necessarily perfectly counterbalance increases in productivity, and especially things like AI that can replace millions of jobs in a very short time span. Increase in human wants and desires and increase in productivity are two different trends with different trajectories that don't change in accordance with one another. Okay, now let's talk about jobs that exist today, jobs that not only are completely pointless, but cause more harm than good. So those 60% of people that are actually employed in America today, that number could and should be even lower. How many people do you know that complain about their jobs, whether they hate it, or how many of them tell you they don't do anything for half their day, for a third of their day, for 2/3 of their day? How many people have that experience? How many people think their jobs don't need to exist at all? How many jobs are there where the person doing the job cannot justify the existence of it, but have to pretend that there's some reason for it to exist? And what makes this all worse is that people want to feel useful. People want their job to mean something. They would rather work a job where they felt useful. And so many people feel miserable working the jobs that aren't useful. People want to contribute to society. Let's take a look at some jobs that serve no purpose to consumers and should not exist. Being a car salesman. Having any job at a car dealership. Why do car dealerships exist? Not a single person buying a car wants to go and negotiate with their nearest local car dealership. If there was one set price for each car type that everybody paid, everyone would be happier. It saves time, it saves money, nobody feels like they get ripped off. Yet, car dealerships still exist, and the jobs that come with them. If all car dealerships disappeared tomorrow and a set price for the cars was decided on, everyone would be happier except the people who had a job at the car dealership. But this is not an excuse to keep car dealerships around, saying, well, these people need to earn a living, so they should just smash rocks together and we can pay them for it, just to make sure they don't go homeless. Does anyone say that? What about dying industries that people prop up to keep the jobs? For example, the coal industry. Whether we need to downsize the coal industry because of climate change, or even because a better technology exists that replaces it, like natural gas, no matter what it is, our reaction should not be, oh no, what about the coal miners? What about the jobs? This is something that free market capitalists should agree with me on. If there is less demand for coal because another form of energy is replacing it, or if it's harmful enough to our atmosphere that we will end up losing money from using coal in the future, we need to stop mining it. And the people who have the jobs need to get different jobs. And if there aren't enough jobs, we need to ensure that they can live lives without going homeless. We should not prop an industry up that is dying just to save jobs. Once again, this can go back to smashing rocks together. If there is no reason to continue mining coal, you may as well be smashing rocks together and having people pay you for it. Taking care of the people who lose their jobs should be a separate issue. What about internet service providers, or basically any company that has a subscription service and has customer retention employees? Let's say you have Comcast and they are the only internet service provider in your neighborhood, and you want to cancel your service with them. No, you can't do it online. That would make it too easy and wouldn't require an employee being paid by the hour to deal with you. No, you have to call someone on the phone whose job it is to convince you not to cancel it. Why do customer retention workers exist? Because the company makes more in saved services from being canceled than they do paying these people wages. But no consumer wants to call customer retention. They want an option to cancel, and they want it to be easy. Customers would be a lot happier, and people working customer retention would be out of a job. The job does not help society in any way. So these customer retention workers, going back to our analogy of smashing rocks together, they would not be smashing rocks together in this analogy. They would be throwing rocks at other people's cars and getting paid for it. Come to think of it, so would the people working at a car dealership. There is no extra product or service being offered that couldn't be offered without these guys. It is literally hiring people so that consumers have to jump through extra hoops to get the same product they were going to get to begin with. This is not a matter of the business being unable to better service the customer due to a lack of intelligence or efficiency. This is them adding extra steps on purpose to create a more annoying experience for the customer. And how many more jobs are out there that are like the ones I mentioned? And our excuse for keeping them cannot be, but these people need wages to survive. I can't stress that enough. How about we don't let them starve, but also allow for them to stop playing with rocks? If these people are earning money without creating value, then we have enough money to pay them to sit on their couch and not create value. We have the money. There's just a big problem in our thought process of who deserves to get it and how much they deserve to get. At some point, people are going to have to grapple with giving capital to people who don't create value. People in America are accustomed and attached to the idea that you work for your money, you earn it, and if you don't work or create value, you don't deserve money. And we have to steer away from that thinking. Not only because there are so many jobs that don't create value anyway, but also because over time, robots will be the ones creating value, not humans. And this should be something we are looking forward to. This should make us happy. That's the goal. I think my friend Rutger Bregman explains this pretty well.
I think that a universal basic income will be a game changer. The whole idea of completely eradicating poverty with a monthly, completely unconditional cash grant, people can always fall back on it. It will give you much more bargaining power, and it gives you the ability to say no to a job you don't want to do. This means that we'll move towards an economy in which the wages will much better reflect the social value of the jobs that we do. An economy in which the cleaners may even earn more than the bankers. And to be honest, I'd like to live in that economy. The day a robot takes your job should be the best day of your life. Jobs are for robots, life is for people. This is meant to be this way. It's the whole purpose of progress and of capitalism. Now the question is, of course, how do we make sure everyone benefits? Nowadays it seems as if the owners of the robots, the capitalists, that they're the only ones that are benefiting. We need to remember here that technology is not destiny. In the end, what really matters are the ideas and the social political institutions that make sure that we all benefit. I'm a bit tired of all those Silicon Valley trend watchers and prophets who say that the technology will solve all our problems. Well, actually, in the 1960s, they also predicted that we would be having a 20-hour or 15-hour work week now. But what I see happening is that there are millions of people wasting their time in completely useless jobs. So we should never underestimate capitalism's ability to come up with new bullshit jobs. The trick here is to change our thinking. You know, the obstacle is not in economics, it's not technological, but it's ideological. A lot of people these days believe that we live in a time of incredible innovation and progress. But you know, as a historian, I like to zoom out, and actually it's a bit disappointing, to be honest. If you read the science fiction from the 70s, they predicted that we would be on Mars already, and we should have these flying cars. Where are they? I think a big reason is that so many smart people are wasting their time. We've got brilliant mathematicians working in Silicon Valley, trying to find out how we can click on as much ads as possible. We've got brilliant engineers who move to Wall Street, coming up with new destructive financial products. So there's an incredible waste of human talent going on.
Let me say that again for the people in the back. The day your job gets replaced by a robot should be the best day of your life. Jobs are for robots. Life is for people. Remember why jobs exist. They exist to improve our own lives. And if they do more damage than good, they should not exist. And if we get to a point where only 30% of the US population has to work to achieve a continuous growth in GDP, then we need to be willing to give money to the people who do not work. And if you think, but a job gives people purpose. Yeah, you're right, some of them do. But most don't. Ask a cashier if they think scanning barcodes makes them feel purpose. Ask a sales rep if they think convincing people to buy perfume makes them feel purpose. I truly feel that the biggest obstacle for a universal basic income and for working less in general is not that we can't afford it, but that people convince themselves that you have to earn your keep. It is so deeply ingrained in so many people in America that it is unfathomable to people that anyone deserves to live over the poverty line without working. We need to be okay living in a world where we redistribute income. We already do it. Tax brackets exist. We're just gonna have to ramp it up. Thank you for watching, and have a good one.